Hi there, welcome to the Upcycled Design Lab. My name's Cindy and I craft using recycled and repurposed materials. If you're new here, I hope you'll stick around and check out some of my other upcycling tutorials, and if you like what you see, you can check the subscribe button below any of my videos. Also, if you'd like to be notified when I upload new videos, be sure to check the bell icon as well. So if you've seen some of my recent videos, you know I've been working on a lot of projects to make over my craft room, and you can see one of them behind me right here that I just did in cardboard. For this video, I'm taking a break from that, and I'm actually starting a new series that I'm going to call Can This Be Saved? Because I like a challenge and I like to save things that to most people would probably be unsavable. So I have a couch that I'm going to be repairing and painting for this video, and I'm afraid it might be a kind of lengthy video because I have a lot of details to share with you, so I'll try to make it as brief as possible, but I do want to impart all the things that I've learned from this project. I also have a couple of other projects that probably could have fallen under this category, and I'll link to them in the comment section of this video. But a few years ago I fixed a tabletop that was very scratched up from our dogs with some tin cans, and I also repaired some chairs to be sort of a faux wicker finish that my cats had really clawed up. So for this video, like I said, I'm going to be working on a couch, and because I like a challenge, I will be honest right up front and tell you that I have not painted furniture and upholstery before, so rather than starting with a small project like most people would, I just jumped right in and decided to try to repair our couch. So like I said before, I hope this video doesn't get too long, but I do want to share with you all of the things that I kind of learned through this process. And as my video title states, I did break a lot of the traditional rules that I saw in other videos from other people that have painted upholstery furniture. Alright, so like I said before, I've never painted upholstery, so I did some research and watched a lot of videos, and without fail, pretty much everybody recommends that you start with upholstery that's in good condition. But with all the animals we have in our house, they're pretty hard on the furniture, so this is what my couch looked like when I started. So the first thing I needed to do was to make some patches to cover the holes, and I decided just to use some denim and circle shape. So I am tracing some circles here, and the trick about circles is that you want to cut about a ½ inch outside of the line that you've drawn, and then you can clip into that line, and then you're just going to sew the tabs down, which will give you a nice round circle. So I'm using some contrasting thread here because I want to be able to see it to pull it out later, and I'm just starting the thread with a couple of loose stitches, and then I'm going to go and fold down each tab and just put one stitch in each tab, starting at the bottom corner in a diagonal pattern up to the top corner until I make my way all the way around the circle. So once you've made it all the way around with your stitches, you should be left with a nice round circle. And the next step was to prep the actual holes in the couch itself. So I'm just using a curved upholstery needle to kind of stitch the edges loosely back together. This next step isn't exactly a broken rule, but I've never heard of anyone suggesting that you use Mod Podge on your couch. However, I've used it for fabric before, and because my patches were so big, I wanted to make sure that they stayed kind of connected to the couch, even though I'm going to stitch around the edges. So I'm just putting a thin layer of Mod Podge on, and then I'm applying it to the couch. And here I have sort of I'm going around a corner, so I have to fold up the patch to make it actually fit around the corner. So I'm going to pin it in place, and then I will use my upholstery needle to stitch around the edges. So to stitch around the edge, you want to use small stitches as you would if you were mending anything. And if you've never used an upholstery needle before, it's very helpful when you're working on very thick pieces of material or fabric, because the needle will sort of guide itself back up towards you, whereas a straight needle is much harder to use on these thick surfaces. Once I've finished stitching all the way around the edge and down the fold, I'm going back and removing the basting stitches so they don't show. So I just repeated this process for the other two holes that needed patching, and then just to make the couch look a little more even, I added some more decorative patches to the rest of the couch. So I did try to follow this rule, but as I said, I have a lot of pet hair in my house. So for the cushions, I was able to move those down to my craft room and clean them. The couch upstairs just required a lot of re-cleaning, but I did vacuum them off, and I found that a microfiber cloth and some cleaning solution was the best way to pull a lot of the pet hair out of the cushions. You can spray the cloth or the fabric itself. I found that it worked a little bit better if I just sprayed the cloth and tried to pull the hairs out and kind of get a lot of the dust out of the fabric just by using the cloth dampened with the cleaner. So this rule may be where I went the farthest off the rails, because if you've watched any other videos on painting upholstery, people seem to rave about chalk paint. But I had almost a gallon left over from another project of this interior exterior high gloss paint. So I did run some tests with it, and I even tried making my own chalk paint with it. I've also heard that you can add fabric softener to the upholstery paint, but in the end, after all my testing, I decided just to use the straight high gloss paint. So I did follow this rule for my first coat of paint. I used a spray bottle just to dampen the top of the fabric but not soak the pad underneath, and it does help to get a smoother coat of paint on for the first time around. To be honest, for my subsequent coats I just went ahead with the straight paint, but I think it does help to get the paint sort of deep into the weave for this first coat. So I'm just working in small sections here, spraying a small section with water, and then I'm smoothing it out with my hand and going over it with the paint. And one thing I found after I sprayed the water and kind of smoothed it out with my hand, I was able to pull out some of those last little pet hairs that I'd missed with the first cleaning. So a lot of folks recommend using a lot of water because they are suggesting that you're dyeing the fabric rather than painting it. And I have kind of a dissenting view about that, because if you're working on a synthetic fibers, you can't really get the color into the fibers themselves. But what you are doing with this first coat is filling in the weave, and you do want a nice thinner coat to achieve that. So here's my cushion after the first coat has dried, and the texture is pretty scratchy. So you do want to sand between each of the coats of paint. So here I'm just using a glove on one hand, and then I'm just sanding a little bit, and you can feel right away that the scratchiness is going away. So you don't have to sand a lot, but you do want to sand the entire surface before you put the second coat of paint on. So as I mentioned before, for the second coat and any following coats, I am just using the straight paint. And you want to be able to have plenty of time to let each coat dry, and I did sand between each of the coats. And I did end up doing 4 coats in total. Here's the cushion after the second coat has dried, which you can see that it's closer to the true color, but it's still pretty uneven. So here I'm adding the final coat of paint, and even though the fabric is getting stiffer, it does get smoother with every coat of paint that you apply. So the finish ends up being more supple than you would imagine it to be. So this rule is pretty much a general rule whenever you're painting anything, but it was pretty easy for me just to wipe up a few of the drips off of my wooden floor, so I didn't really worry about having a drop cloth. So the short answer here, of course, is there is no such place in my house. And you can see the dogs kind of making an appearance here as I'm painting the couch. And I'm quite certain that there are a few pet hairs painted into the finish. Again, this just seems like a common sense rule, but unfortunately, most rules don't apply in our house. So here's a quick shot of the couch. I still need to finish the last cushion, but you can see it has kind of a nice leather look to it. There were a couple of problem spots. Right here, you can see where I allowed the paint to drip a little bit. And there were some spots that were really hard to get to paint. Right here, I was able to get a couple of coats of paint on, but then you can see that it's kind of attached with the paint now. But I think it's okay because it's not really going to pull away when you sit on it. And hopefully it will wear pretty well, because one of the best things about it, at least for me, because I have a lot of pets, is that the hair doesn't get woven into the fabric anymore because it's got more of a vinyl or leather look to it, and the hair just kind of brushes off now instead of weaving in and sticking to the fabric. So I think it's going to stay a lot cleaner, and I think it looks all in all a whole lot better. So I just need to finish that last cushion and give it one final sanding and then maybe a little bit of wax. So one of the things I learned when I was trying to learn a little bit more about painting upholstery is that you can add a finishing wax to make the finish a little bit softer. But quite honestly, by the time I got the 4th coat of paint on the couch, it had a really kind of nice vinyl-y leather, it's stiff, but it's soft and smooth finish. So I decided not to bother with the waxing. Plus, I think you have to continue to wax it after the finish wears off. I should mention that this did take a lot of paint. Like I said, I had almost a gallon of paint when I started, and I ended up having to buy 2 more gallons, which has had some left over, but it took a little over 2 gallons of paint to cover this couch. And the last note I wanted to mention is that some people have said that their chalk paint finish cracks. and that's another reason for putting the wax on. But this high gloss paint so far seems very flexible and sturdy, so I don't think I'm going to have any problems with the paint cracking. So that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please do give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me those in the comments below. Also, please consider becoming a subscriber, and I hope to see you soon.